Hi everybody, welcome all to this live special edition broadcast of a potential deal between Qualcomm and Broadcom slash Avago. Quick disclosure, we are long Qualcomm, we are long NXPI, and we'll get the disclosure, say that at the end of this broadcast as well. So today the big story is Qualcomm potentially the subject of an acquisition by Broadcom. It would be perhaps the largest chip company. That and Intel would then be the largest chip companies in the world. Qualcomm provides a lot of dollar content into cell phones, into iPhones, and into other devices, and same with Broadcom. Broadcom recently merged with Avago, which also produces semiconductors. Avago at that point was primarily focused in the RF space, the radio frequency space, which Skyworks is located in as well. So essentially what we have here is two huge multi-billion dollar companies potentially merging. It was reported by Bloomberg, but Qualcomm is already having issues getting its merger with NXPI through antitrust authorities in the EU. So bringing Matt Krebsbach here, do you think they have a chance of actually getting this deal to go through?
At first I thought no. I mean, Broadcom is now bigger than Qualcomm is. Broadcom's market cap is 110 billion, I just looked at this, and Qualcomm is at 80. I mean, granted, Qualcomm underperformed for about a year just because all this litigation issues with Apple, because of the overhang of the merger, like you said. The way that I think you can push it through is you get it accepted with the condition that you spin off the licensing business. I didn't bring this up before, but I just thought about this like a minute ago. That's like the only way, because it'd be too big. Like they'd be bigger than Intel almost at that point. Because I don't see them improving that, just merging that and getting it bigger than.
And Apple is already complaining that Qualcomm has too much power as it is, because Qualcomm sitting on these patents that they had a decade ago, and can just continuing to milk license fees from that. So now, if Qualcomm and Avago get together, they're going to package all these chip products together, so they'll send it as a bundle, almost as if you were to buy a cable package from a Comcast or a Charter or whoever your cable provider is. You have to buy those channels as a bundle. That's what Skyworks has been increasingly able to do on the RF side. That's what Avago and now Broadcom has been able to do on the chip side, and that's what Qualcomm wants to do as well.
I mean, that's a big thing about thinking about this going through is Broadcom has a lot of real estate in the iPhone already, or in mobile already. Like that's, it'd be really big.
I mean, they would have a lock on iPhone dollar content. How does Apple respond to this? Does Apple endorse it and say, okay, great, we have one-stop shopping, and we can really work with them? They don't.
No. I mean, a big thing for Apple. I mean, that's what you saw with Qualcomm and Apple trying to source Intel chips and MediaTek chips out of Taiwan, is they want multiple suppliers because they don't like having to rely on anyone. They've hated that for the entire time they've been doing the iPhone. I mean, as much as they had to rely on Qualcomm, they're trying to break away from Qualcomm as fast as possible, just because they think Qualcomm's charging too much, and they're not the best of friends right now.
Right, and if you're working with Apple, you have to have a lot of leverage. Because if you don't have leverage, then Apple is just going to eat your lunch. They're going to bully you, and pretty soon you'll say, well, the only way we actually get volume is through Apple, so we'll just take it as a loss leader almost. Mm-hmm. So what Skyworks has been able to do, and where you get margin in working with Apple, is if you can absorb other things in their sphere. So if you provide the GPS chip, if you provide the cellular chip, if you provide the gyroscope, if you provide all these different chips in the phone, all of a sudden you can bundle those together and say, here, we have this package. And that's really what Qualcomm tried to do with the RF360 a few years ago, but that hasn't really taken off. So this would provide, you have your RF component, you have your modems, and then they would be able to sell those bundled to Apple and say, hey Apple, we're doing a lot more of the work because we're putting these parts together, we're putting these components together. You don't have to do so much work on the design side, so we're going to take some of that margin. So that's the play if you're Qualcomm and Broadcom. If you're Apple, you're basically saying, hey, we already do this stuff anyway, this is what we pay our chip designers to do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not that surprised that this is on the table. Like I thought just the discrepancy of the underperformance of Qualcomm and outperformance of other chip companies this year. I mean, there's immense value in Qualcomm. I think like if the Apple overhang wasn't there, I think it's easily a $70 stock at least, mid-70s. Like I see it's up 18% now. I mean, it was up like 5% when we started this. So I mean, I guess people think there's a lot of value there, like I do.
That's incredible.
Honestly, I'd be a little bummed if it did go through because I think in time it would get there by itself. Kind of like NXPI, like or I guess that's different, but NXPI too. I think NXPI would have easily gotten there if Qualcomm didn't offer to buy them out.
Yeah,
they would have gotten there themselves.
And just the improvement in the semiconductor space that we've seen in the last year or something is huge. So a player that we haven't talked about is a player who's increasingly big in the iPhone ecosystem. Still just trying to work its way in, but they were the second source supplier for the cellular chips in this most recent iPhone iteration. That's Intel. Intel has been trying to get into the mobile space, it's been trying to play into the mobile arena, and they really haven't been able to get there yet. How does Intel respond to this? Assume it goes through, how does Intel respond? Because now they're on the defense all of a sudden.
I think the thing about Intel is Qualcomm has had an enormous lead in that space for the modems. I think they've cut that gap a lot recently. I think anywhere you look, any like tech analysts or whatever, they tell you that Qualcomm still has the best product out there, but the gap is much smaller. I don't think Intel's in that big of a deficit. I mean, they have a lot of other options other than just modems, but I mean, it's not good, I guess. But it's better for Qualcomm than Intel.
Right. Does Intel now have to go out and buy someone else? And someone we haven't talked about is obviously NXPI. So I guess two questions. First is, does NXPI get put back on the block, as we say internally, which means does this deal now not go through? NXPI is now for sale to the highest bidder somewhere else.
If we went down that path, I think they would try and sell it fast again. I mean, just based on like commentary from management, it seems like they don't want to like see it through, which I was really surprised about and kind of bummed and confused about, quite honestly, at the time. But I think they would sell pretty fast. I mean, that buy price is about $47 billion, I think, is what Qualcomm's paying at the 110 price. I think they'd be bought up pretty fast. But I like the prospects alone. Like I saw it sold off 2% or something on this news, and if it sold off much farther, I'd be interested in just buying it for standalone value, not even just. Or assuming that falls apart, Qualcomm has to go in and pay up to the 120, assuming it gets up there.
Because
a lot of options.
Because there would be a break fee for the Qualcomm NXPI deal anyway. So what happened was about this time last year actually, Qualcomm came in and made a bid for NXP Semiconductors, which is a Dutch headquartered company, and they provide a lot of content, and Krebs understands the story better than me, but they're also big in the auto space.
IoT, automotive, yeah.
So you're talking Internet of Things, automotive, smart vehicles. That's where NXPI plays, and Qualcomm wants to get in that space and really bulk up. Krebs came out with a note earlier today saying that if this deal goes through, it would be very accretive to Qualcomm, adding about $1.50 per share in terms of EPS. For context, Qualcomm, I think, does about $5 in EPS, $4 to $5 in EPS.
I mean, going forward in 2018, it's probably like 3.5.
Going forward, 3.5.
Well, that's partly because Apple's not paying royalties, but
so
that's a different story.
NXPI is a huge acquisition. I presume if this Qualcomm Broadcom deal goes through, I think the NXPI deal is kind of shot.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be extremely complicated, not only internally, but then also with the regulators, because the regulators are already questioning the deal as it is.
Yeah.
If you lump Broadcom into this as well, all of a sudden you're in some heat with, especially the EU regulators and probably other countries as well. Is there a potential that NXPI and Intel would get together?
I don't think so. I think that'd be no. I don't think so. Especially when you lump in Mobileye too, because I mean they did Mobileye. What was that now? 6 months, 9 months ago? I'll say maybe a year. Can't remember. I don't know. You just could have a lot of concentrated players there. I don't know if that would fly.
But I do agree with Krebs when he says that I think that NXPI could get bought out by someone else. Remember that Ken Singer's actually a big investor in NXPI's, and he's actually lobbying for NXPI to go and shop itself around to other.
That's another interesting
other
thing.
companies.
Like I say that, but then at the same time, you haven't seen another bidder come out topping Qualcomm's 110 bid.
Right.
There's a lot of questions there.
So here's the deal right now. We have Qualcomm, which bid $110 for NXPI. We think that if Broadcom and Qualcomm ended up doing a deal, that deal's off the table. You have NXPI trading at $114, $115. It was $117 earlier today before this news came out. You have Ken Singer, who's a huge activist investor of Elliott Management. He bought NXPI a few weeks ago or a few months ago saying that NXPI is not doing it right by its shareholders and needs to go shop for the best deal. So I saw the news yesterday. Singer hired UBS, the investment bank, to then go around and look for a better bid for NXPI. And we were talking about it this morning. We said, well, if Qualcomm doesn't buy NXPI, who would? And Broadcom, Avago, was the immediate choice. Are there any other potential buyers? Because
it's going to be it's going to have to be a big company. You know, it can't just be can't be a Skyworks like you said before. I mean, I think just Texas Instruments sounds possible. Like I said, I think Intel might be too big. I feel like I'm missing someone that I can't think of off the top of my head right now.
Do you think NXPI could be the acquirer? And acquire someone like a Maxim?
I mean, it's possible, but just based on their actions in the past, it's like they just want to get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it comes across to me, I guess.
Right. So again, this Qualcomm NXPI deal probably off the table. Qualcomm, Broadcom potentially on the table. Market thinks Qualcomm, Broadcom's on the table for sure. Qualcomm, you're getting a nice dividend, but you have the big concern with the Apple litigation. I don't know, Krebs, was there anything else you wanted to mention at this time?
No, I mean, just a lot of action today.
Yeah.
A lot of consolidation.
Indeed. And also watch what Apple says on this, because when there is consolidation in the supply chain, that could get the OEM, or in this case, Apple. You know,
one more thing about that, this can only be used as a positive in terms of the disagreements with Apple. That can only benefit Qualcomm, this development.
Yeah, Broadcom would not be looking to buy a company whose earnings per share are going to get in half.
Yeah,
that would look terrible. They'd have massive write-downs. I guess it would help their tax bill, but that's sometimes not the best thing to look for tax breaks at all costs. So that's it for now. Again, we do own shares of Qualcomm. We do own shares of NXPI. All these
and Skyworks.
And Apple.
Yeah.
Intel.
Yeah.
Again, so everything we've said here is obviously opinion. We're reporting on a story sourced from Bloomberg. All data that we've been talking about in terms of prices sourced from Bloomberg or Yahoo Finance. So there's a full disclosure. If you look at narwhalcapital.com, you can look at our ADV there. But I think that's it for now. But stay tuned. Thanks.